You're tuned in to the Breaking Red podcast, the show for rising military leaders who want to trailblaze the future. We tackle the profession of arms with creative solutions to dynamic issues. This isn't your typical leadership course, so be ready to step up your game and define the future. I am your host, Gabriel Gabe Rockavilla. Let's go. What is up, everybody in the Breaking Red podcast community? I need to come up with a better title because it sounds kind of lame the way I said it. Like, I have to come up with a definite name for, could be, not Breaking Bad. Ben, that doesn't even make sense. I have to figure out something. It could be Team Breaking, the Red Breakers. That might be it. Something I can attach a hashtag to. I will figure that as I go along. I am your host, Gabe Rock, with some interesting stuff I want to talk about today. Today's episode is going to be focusing on buzzwords and really how they can be a double-edged sword. And really because there's a lot of words. To me, buzzwords are something that when people start to use them, you need to understand how they're using them and why. Because a lot of times when people use buzzwords, in my opinion, they are just a cover-up for some sort of either, not necessarily insecurity, but it's something where they're not necessarily sure their full thought behind it. They don't know their full idea, and so they just sprinkle in buzzwords to make it sound irrelevant, to make them sound relevant, I should say. So you just need to be wary when you hear certain buzzwords, to the point where I actually stopped using certain buzzwords because I think they're just played out. They're 2000 late, and I want to make sure that I don't have the audience that I'm trying to engage immediately tune out, because if you hear buzzwords too often, I can hear the eye rolls happening within the airmen in our formations. And so our job as leaders is to try and engage action and make sure we capture the attention of our audience. And we can't have that if we immediately blunt ourselves because we're using buzzwords too often. So I'm going to talk about 3 buzzwords that have actually removed from my vocabulary and the reason why. So and if you've actually met me in person, you'll realize that I actually do not say these words anymore. I've replaced them in a natural sentence. I will just say, for instance, I will say, first buzzword, innovation. I don't use that word anymore. I just say the I word, because I think that word is just applied too often and it's lost its meaning. I word things is really just the search for the new idea that can solve long-lasting problems and or efficiencies that have been prevalent for too long. So you can magically just go to the store and buy the I word box and apply it to your problem. That, oh my God, you're amazing. Like, no, you're not. It depends on how you're doing it. And the search for I word solutions, although the intent is good, the execution has a lot of caveats with it. So I word things you're not necessarily looking for new ideas. In my opinion, I believe we just need to let existing ideas be explored with appropriate resources and not being bound by existing rule sets. There are systems and frameworks that are built on insecurities that really prevent I word things from happening. And I'm sure there's good reasons. I'm not privy to all of them, but there has to be reasons of just double checking, especially the resources and the money piece. There's reasons, and there are definite rule sets we should be playing by as far as how to spend money, but they don't necessarily make sense when people just want to say, like, well, add some I word stuff to it. You can't just say that and just all of a sudden it'll just be applicable. So there has to be some sort of method to the madness of really truly looking at I word efforts. In addition, I word things they're difficult for them to exist because they don't match to traditional mindsets, current mindsets, potentially things such as like the frozen middle. When you think about I word things, you're trying to minimize the amount of from flash to bang, from decision to action. And a lot of times the frozen middle is going to be built in to be like, no, I need to approve certain actions. Like, no, you don't. Like, if we trust everybody at the lowest level and can actually enable empowered execution, that's how I word things can happen. And so I don't know why it became so vogue to just use the I word. It's very much an industry buzzword right now, and I believe because we want to look contemporary and see exactly how we could do things better, we just want to have our own version of I word things. So you've seen there's I word funds, there's I word initiatives and programs you can get recognized and you can get actually personally paid, which is all good intentions, but time will tell if those solutions brought up are actually going to stand the test of time. Because I hope they do. I have yet to see one, but I really, really hope they do. And lastly, at least for the I word, I believe airmen in general, I were to nature. I think that stands at the core of what we are as far as being airmen and air-mindedness. So I don't necessarily have to apply a new word like the I word just to make myself feel better. How about I just be a good airman and just come up with things that have a I word foundation, and then we get those things to happen. I don't have to use the word in order to make sure that it seems relevant. Second word I think about that I stopped using: resiliency. I used the R word instead. And I know we just had a resiliency stand down day, and a lot of places for the right reasons took the importance of focusing on that is important. The idea behind the R word is important. Just the applicability of using the words is just overdone, in my opinion. I think it becomes a cover term designed to demonstrate we care about the mental state of our airmen. And when I say that, I really think it's just it's kind of like a CYA. It's a cover your ass. It's like, no. If we're doing R word things, you could do anything if you just say like, oh, it's an R word initiative. Oh, okay. So no one's going to say no to those kind of things. And so whether or not you're truly intend that to be an R word event, I'm not really sure if everybody knows exactly how to do those. But the corporate expectation that we develop the individual responsibility to maintain our own mental state, which is fair, right? And as far as it's fair, and it's also very, very difficult. When the Air Force gets into the business of trying to raise responsible human beings, I mean, as much as we apply resources and everything, and we want to, it's very, very hard to make sure that is a guaranteed end state. It's not like the same as, knowing a MOE or MOP and putting and measuring the success rate of it all, because how can you do that? R word things are inevitably, you just want to minimize all the negative behavior. So that's a way to do it, but I'm not necessarily sure if I can correlate the two things, because just because negative behavior went down does not necessarily mean we have applied successful R word strategies. So R word stuff is very a touchy-feely topic as well. And a lot of times people will just turn off the moment you start talking about R word things because you're getting into their personal business. Arguably, there's a degree where you can find that right balance, but like most things, you can't just expect one approach to apply to everybody. There has to be multiple approaches for all the different kind of personalities we have in the Air Force, and we have to. And it's responsibility for our frontline supervisors to know their personnel and apply the right strategy to make sure that we care about our airmen, and we want them to make sure that they have access to the resources that are available. And there's a bajillion resources available to become a R word airman. But we don't necessarily have to beat it into them and make sure that we're almost watering down the message if we talk about it too much. So that's the reason why I stopped using the R word. Third one, which is mainly more applicable, I just realized this probably within the last week or so, and is applicable in my profession. Again, I'm a comm officer, and so in the struggle for us to either in our struggle for identity crisis and or trying to make sure we sound relevant in comparison to our fellow 10 series operator AFSCs as an officer anyway, we start overusing this word. And the third word I'm going to talk about is operationalize. So now that's going to become the O word to me. When you use the term, I want to operationalize the network. Okay, so that sounds really cool, but that is really far from reality. And I say that lovingly, and I'm a comm officer. Those are just words. What it sounds like is you're just trying to make sure you want to say that I want to apply the rigor and demonstrate the importance of the network, so I want to operationalize it. Okay, so I'm not sure everybody understands how to apply that word. Again, as a support officer, traditional support officer, it just sounds like we're trying to sound more important. As a comm officer, I know I'm important. I know the things that we do day in and day out are important, so I don't have to make myself sound more important. So why would I have to start just sprinkling and operationalizing every single effort that we do? The other portion, it might be a very, very closely related. I haven't made it my fourth word that I'm going to buzzword stop using, multi-domain. And the reason why I picked that one is it's just a very complex word, and there are lots of smart people who have lots of opinions on how to approach that. But I'm not going to go into that. I'm just going to stick to stop using the word O word. But I'm not sure why we have to use that word to make ourselves feel more relevant. And we can't use that word unless we're going to mean it. And so the reason why it doesn't work is because we in our community aren't able to, we still have so much bureaucracy where we sit and how we engage our activities that we can't operationalize. Operationalize ends up becoming very close to mission command, where you're making a lot of empowered decisions at the lowest levels. We don't do that. When we pick an effect, it has second and third order effects on multiple mission partners. So that means everybody gets a vote. And when too many people a vote, you're not going to be able to operationalize anything, because it becomes a taking decision and making it becomes taking action and making decisions by vote and by majority. And that does not meet the operational agility that we need in our domain. As cyber guys, when our stuff happens, it happens really quickly. So we need to have decision matrices and decision authorities happen just as quick, but we're not there yet. So when I start to see people use the O word, I start to question, like, do you really mean that? I'm sure you believe in that. Do you mean that? Because I think it's different if you're allowing your personnel to make certain decisions. And if not, then you're not really behind the idea of operationalize, both for resource reasons, because potentially there's not enough resources behind it, nor are we empowering the right levels of authority down to the lowest levels. So 3 words I'm just not a fan of, and I remove from my vocabulary: the I word, innovation; the R word, resiliency; and the O word, operationalize. So inevitably, these words are unavoidable. They're baked into senior leadership narratives, and for good reasons. Again, the intent behind those words are good. The execution is what I have a problem with. So how do I actually approach what I can offer as advice to you? How can you lead in an environment where these words are unavoidable? I mean, you could be like me and just say I word, R word, and O word, and people are going to question, like, why does he talk like that? It's like, oh, because he doesn't believe in those words anymore. And then we eventually have a conversation of why. So I'll just give you these things. That way you can actually just put things into action. It's way more important, in my opinion, taking actions versus words. We can get into, like, I'm looking at when I'm recording these episodes in my basement. I mentioned to my family that I'm not a big fan of those motivational things that you can buy at like any kind of department store. So it's like I have a sign that says "Shoot for the moon." Okay, cool. That's cute. And so, but those motivational things don't mean anything. I can buy 17 motivational things for my computer. It doesn't mean anything if I don't take any action. In my opinion, same logic applies here. So what can you do action-wise in order to deliver the effect that is supposed to be the underlying intent behind all these words? So for the I word, I really think you just need to just listen. As an officer, you need to listen and just listen a little bit more. Ask questions on process improvement and look for the quick fixes and apply them. Hopefully you're going to be in a position where you can apply everyone's ideas in order to build some street cred off quick fixes and deliver eventually some game-changing ideas. But before you come into them like, oh, I found this I-word thing and I found this new system off the shelf, like, that's not you being I-word. That's you finding something new and just buying the newest thing. That'd be like, that doesn't make sense. You are not applying the intent of I-word things and using a new solution, a new solution for an old problem. You're just buying the newest technology, which does not equate to I-word stuff. As you come up with these things as well, in addition to listening to just for small process improvement fixes, you really need to, before you get in front of senior leadership, you need to build a coalition of the willing. So in other words, don't come off the top rope. And this is specifically because I'm one of the comm guys. When someone brings up to a wing commander and just says, hey, so I found this thing on the internet and it happens to be the solution system that we need to be able to do, and you put that in front of the wing commander before talking with me and my team as a comm squad commander, now I look like a jackass, because I'm going to have to be the guy that says, like, no, that's not going to work because of XYZ cybersecurity reasons. So before you do that, make sure you talk to us. I think you don't want to burn a bridge with a key mission partner in the time where you're trying to present in senior leadership. It's just not going to be a good look. So if you're especially looking at technology related I-word things, talk to your local comm squadron and make sure they are on board. A good comm squadron will help you figure out the process. It's not going to probably be as fast as you want it to be. That's a separate conversation. There are things and there's reasons why, security reasons why there's certain processes exist for your idea to be approved or disapproved. So Just work with this stuff. That's the only thing I can ask. Work with us to make sure that we can be part of your solution, not necessarily an opponent, right? So because iWord actions rarely work alone. You need to have a team to develop the solutions you want to bring to light. R-word things. I think the best way for you to be a good example of R-word is just to admit your own personal level of humility and shortcomings and how you are working towards remedying them. When I was a squadron commander, I told my squadron a lot of times, I was like, no, I actually went to go see a counselor from the MFLAC to make sure, because I needed some marriage counseling. Openly just say those kind of things. I need people, and they're like, oh, really? Wow. The boss just said that he's using a available resource. I'm like, yeah, I'm serious. Like, it was there for a reason, and I want them to be comfortable admitting to everybody that we're not all perfect. And so instead of just coming off with like the sanitized training things that you meet in Green Dot training or whatever it is, like they're too sterile and theoretical. Be brave enough to share your own stories, because that's where you're going to get people to actually have true conversations of, here's the stuff I'm dealing with. Oh, cool, man. I want to help. I want to be able to connect you with the right people, because there's enough people around the base in order to help you. You just have to break those barriers down for people to admit that we're all human and all of us have problems and we all have reasons, and just life happens. But the true meaning of being R-word is also being able to admit that you need help from other people. So figuring out ways in order to break those things down and just being a true person. That's how I would advise to get after R-word things. O-word, I would actually say you need to learn how to communicate better. In other words, learn how to deliver value immediately to your senior leadership, whoever you're talking to, of true things that are happening. You want to be able to say that this decision point needs to happen at this speed. So potentially, like, making quick decisions and agility is what you really want to try and affect, versus just the blanket term of operationalizing. And if you're going to do O-word things, you need to hold people accountable. If people are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, you need to be in support the position of authority in order to cut them off and turn off whatever it is. If you're not responsible enough to have this weapon system or operate or maintain a certain way, then you don't get to use it. And you have to have the sand and the teeth in order to say those kind of things and hold them accountable. In our function community, we need to do better. And I'm fortunately in a position where I think I can help influence a conversation. So I really think that if we're going to treat this thing seriously, if you really want people to understand, sometimes you need to take their toys away from them. Then all of a sudden they're like, oh, wait. So I actually have to do the stuff you told me? Yes, there's a reason why. That's where you start getting to the true essence of O-word things, because it's not a thing of just convincing them with buzzwords. You need to actually put work into there and hold people accountable to their responsibilities. That'll actually deliver a true version of the lethality of whatever system that you're responsible for. 3 words: I-word, R-word, and O-word. The intent behind those buzzwords I still use day to day. I just don't use those words because they're overused, and I really think we have better ways to approach this while remaining true to it without actually just coming off as just using buzzwords and just being hollow with our approach. Are there any buzzwords that I'm missing? Are there certain other buzzwords that are out there that you're just sick of hearing because every time you hear it, it's just the same approach and just kind of it doesn't offer a genuine interaction? And I'm curious to know if there's any other buzzwords that you're sick and tired of hearing, and what would be a better solution you want to do? What would be a better solution you want to apply to get after the essence of behind that buzzword, because they're important, but you can avoid using the buzzwords altogether. And I would argue, please, when you hear those buzzwords, listen intently, but understand, is that person actually genuinely meaning what they say, or are they just saying the corporate buzzword because it's going to make them sound relevant? And you have to make a decision on your own of how those things are going to, and how they'll affect your teams accordingly. I think that's going to be it for this episode. Invite you to subscribe and all that jazz. I'm supposed to be better about this call to arms section. This is the very, very end of every single episode. So social media, find it, follow it, subscribe, all that jazz. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, you'll figure it out. It'll be in the show notes. That's probably going to be a better approach for me to do because I don't like necessarily doing these pieces. And I think I'm going to end episode 2 at that. Very, very raw. Just want to get this media out there. We're going to see how we can continue to make the Air Force we want to see. Thanks for tuning in. Let's break red together. Peace.